Once the world figures out how Bitcoin works, what are the consequences of owning zero Bitcoin? In this video, I want to go into this in depth. Let's get started. The very first thing that I want to start with is that most people don't really care about Bitcoin's scarcity. Even though Bitcoin is the scarcest asset in the world and there are only ever going to be 21 million, people aren't able to wrap their head around this. They don't know what absolute finality of supply means. There's never, ever going to be more than 21 million. It doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter who you pay. It doesn't matter what you try to change. It doesn't matter what kind of protests you run. It doesn't matter which laws you change. It doesn't matter how powerful you are in the world. There will never be more than 21 million Bitcoin because in order to increase the supply of Bitcoin, you have to convince the people who own some to change the code and dilute their own savings. I've shown you the Bitcoin supply schedule before. This is how Bitcoin's supply is going to be added to the economy. And once this supply is done, once we have 100% of the total supply already issued, there's never going to be any more. You'll never see more Bitcoin being created because that's how the system is designed to work. It's incorruptible software. You can't change it. You can't convince it. You can't tell it that you're going to hurt its family in order to change the supply of Bitcoin. None of this can happen. So we're going to see the supply of Bitcoin, the total supply of Bitcoin. This is the blue is the total supply, and the orange is the total new supply. So the new supply each one of these epochs every 4 years. We're going to see the total new supply decrease forever, and then we're going to see the Bitcoin total supply peak, and it'll never increase again. So if you're ignoring Bitcoin right now, what this means is if you have, let's say, $1,000, you can go and buy almost 1 million Satoshis. 1 million Satoshis is 0.01 Bitcoin. So one Bitcoin can be split into 100 million Satoshis. You could go and buy for $1,000, you could buy 1 million Satoshis. And we can see here in 2060, that seems like a really long time away. That's 35 years. But in 2060, let's say you're a millennial and you're 65, 70 years old. In 2060, the entire world is going to be fighting every 10 minutes for a new supply of 610,000 Satoshis. That's 10 minutes of the entire world's computing power that's dedicated to Bitcoin, all spent on trying to find the next block, and it's only worth 610,352 Satoshis. So if you buy 1 million Satoshis for $1,000, it probably won't make that much of a difference in your life, especially if you're in North America. If you have a significant amount of money already in other things, let's say houses, stocks, use a little bit of that money to buy Bitcoin, because if you don't, you're going to see that your quality of living is going to decrease over time. We're going to see the inflation rate increase much past the returns that stocks can offer us, the returns that real estate can offer us. The reason for this is that Bitcoin can massively outperform stocks and real estate. So when people start buying Bitcoin as collateral and they start borrowing dollars against that Bitcoin and flooding the economy with more dollars, you're going to see the price of everything increase even faster. This is like a flywheel effect of its own. So it takes a long time for people to figure out what Bitcoin is. Then when they figure it out, it's almost like a light bulb moment where you flip a switch and they want as much as they can get. I've never met somebody who understands Bitcoin and doesn't want more. So you flip the switch, they want as much as they can get. And then over time, this took me some time. I'll admit it. It took me longer than I had expected. But it took me some time to really think about how borrowing against Bitcoin works. If you borrow against a very small amount of your stack, then you could easily get some cash flow to run your daily life. So let's say in 2060, we're still on a US dollar standard and the Bitcoin standard hasn't really started yet. For whatever reason, I don't know what the reasoning behind that could be. I think that Bitcoin's growth is going to accelerate, and I think the US dollar's debasement is also going to accelerate. So it's going to debase at a faster pace. So let's say you have 1 million Satoshis, 2060. The entire world is fighting for 610,000 Satoshis every 10 minutes. How much is 610,000 Satoshis worth? At that point, maybe it's worth $10 million for all we know. Today, the block reward is worth about $325,000 or so. $105,000 per Bitcoin. The people who create The next block at 3.125 Bitcoin. Over time, it's going to halve and halve and halve until 2060 when it's below a million Satoshis. So, how much is a million Satoshis going to be worth at that point? To be honest, it could be priceless. It may not have a value. Maybe the value of this amount of Bitcoin has gone up so much that we no longer value things in US dollars. The US dollar has lost so much of its purchasing power that you literally need wheelbarrows to move it around. So let's say if you're saving in US dollars or index funds or real estate and you're getting a 3 to 5% return regularly, what's going to happen is you're going to get poorer and poorer. Your quality of life is going to decrease because your returns aren't keeping up with real inflation. As Bitcoin's price rises and it goes to, let's say, 500,000, then it goes to a million, then it goes to 2 million, then 5 million, it keeps going. You're able to borrow bigger and bigger amounts against that same amount of Bitcoin that you put up as collateral. So if you have a million Satoshis today, maybe you can borrow something like $50 against it. But if you have a million Satoshis and the price goes to 200,000, you can now borrow $100 against it pretty easily, pretty securely. You're not really going to be worried about being liquidated. If your loan to value is that low, it's like 5%, then Bitcoin's price would have to fall something like 95% for you to be liquidated. So over time, as Bitcoin's price increases, you can borrow more and more money against your stack, and you can keep adding that money to the economy. So now when your million Satoshis is worth $2,000, you can borrow $100 against it. Then it goes to $10,000. You can borrow $500 against it. Then it goes to $100,000. You can now borrow $5,000 against it. And keep in mind that the people who are borrowing against their Bitcoin, they're not borrowing against 0.01 Bitcoin. They're borrowing against tens of Bitcoin. They're borrowing against hundreds of Bitcoin. They're using this Bitcoin as collateral in order to borrow money that's created out of nothing and added to the economy. So they have this advantage where they have this asset that keeps increasing in value because the supply isn't increasing as fast as everything else. So again, we have this asset that keeps increasing in price. You can use it as collateral. More banks are going to start accepting it as collateral. They're going to give you low interest rates because it's the least risky asset in the world. Anybody who saves in dollars, anybody who saves in any asset other than Bitcoin is going to be screwed. For example, the price of houses in terms of US dollars will go up forever. We're not going to see this stop. We're not going to see this slow down because more and more dollars can be added to the economy. There's no reason not to add more money to the economy. For the US government, it's an arbitrage opportunity. You're willing to give away your time, your labor, your energy, the things that you value in exchange for a piece of paper. They can print it. They have no incentive not to print it because they can take more things from you by printing something that you find valuable. So over time, we're going to see the people who don't save in Bitcoin, their quality of life is going to decrease. They're going to eat 3D printed steaks. They're going to eat pasta that's made with insect flour. We're going to see a lot more people eating bugs because they can't afford the real foods. You're probably going to have a lot more manufactured foods, processed foods, ultra processed foods, and your diet is just going to get worse and worse because you can't afford the real foods. More people are going to be living in tinier and tinier apartments because they can't afford to buy land. They can't afford to buy houses. Single family homes on the market have gone up so much in price that the people on average can't afford them. They're all owned by institutions and individuals who are using those houses as collateral. They're using them as a financial instrument so that they can borrow against the house and then they can buy more Bitcoin with it. If you save in fiat currencies, your perception of the world is going to get worse and worse and worse because your life is going to get more and more expensive. You're not going to be able to afford the things that you want to do because the savings that you have are going to keep decreasing in value. Your cost of living is going to continue to increase forever, and you're going to see that your standard of living is decreasing because if your wage doesn't increase as fast as the inflation rate, and that's already happening, people are seeing 1 to 2% raises while inflation is in reality 7 to 10%. At that point, when we do go on a Bitcoin standard and people are still using fiat, they're still accepting fiat for the work that they do, you're going to see 20, 30% inflation per year because Bitcoin's price can rise at 50, 60, 70, 80%. So the people who are borrowing against their Bitcoin can borrow more fiat and add it to the economy much quicker. So my suggestion here would be to buy as much Bitcoin as you can. It doesn't matter how much you can buy a million Satoshis, buy 10 million Satoshis. For all I care, buy 1,000 Bitcoin, whatever you can afford. go and get it, because if you don't, the purchasing power of your savings is going to decrease. You're going to see that you're able to afford fewer and fewer high quality goods over time because it takes more and more of your time, effort, energy, resources to buy it. As more people figure out how Bitcoin works, fewer and fewer Bitcoin are going to be available for sale. Let's say, for example, the people who buy one Bitcoin today, there's a psychological barrier where they may not want to sell because they want to stay at one Bitcoin. Or if somebody gets to 10 million Satoshis, maybe they don't want to dip below 10 million. So they're just going to hold that much no matter what. If they ever need extra cash, they're just going to borrow against their Bitcoin and they're not going to sell what they have. So over time, you're going to see that fewer and fewer Bitcoin are actually available for sale as well. And again, this is going to accelerate that process. This is going to increase the price, meaning that banks are more incentivized to use Bitcoin as collateral because as the price goes up, it becomes less risky. As more banks offer lending services against Bitcoin, you're going to see that fewer and fewer people are having to sell their Bitcoin, meaning that fewer and fewer Bitcoin are coming to the market. So you have this opportunity right now to buy 1 million Satoshis for, like I said, $1,000. This opportunity is going to run out. Eventually, you won't be able to do this. It's mathematically impossible for everybody on Earth to own 1 million Satoshis. So if you can buy 1 million Satoshis today, get it done. If you can get 10 million Satoshis, get it done. If you can get a whole Bitcoin, do it. It's the best decision that you'll ever make because over time, if you don't own Bitcoin, you're going to see your quality of life decreasing. You're going to see your cost of living increasing. You're going to see that you're able to afford fewer and fewer things that you're able to afford today. I think that the majority wave of investors has not started yet. I don't think most real estate investors are buying Bitcoin. Most stock investors are not buying Bitcoin. They're still sticking to the assets that they have. Once they realize that the returns from Bitcoin are way higher than whatever asset they own, why wouldn't they want Bitcoin? Logically, it makes no sense. If you have to do 1,000 times the work with real estate, but you get a fraction of the return, why would you continue buying real estate over Bitcoin? If anything, people will borrow against their real estate to buy Bitcoin. But I think a lot of people are going to sell their real estate to buy Bitcoin. I've had quite a few people book one on one meetings with me just because they wanted to talk through the process of selling their house or their rental properties to buy Bitcoin. I've had people selling 5 rental properties, 10 rental properties after their conversation with me. They give me updates. It's amazing just to see that people don't want to hold real estate because the management is just so annoying. I had a doctor who reached out to me. He had a few rental properties. He didn't want to manage them. He was basically forced into it because if you save in dollars, he understands that if you save in dollars, then the money that you have is just going to be worthless. No matter how much work he does at his job, he's going to get broker and broker over time. So he bought rental properties thinking that he'll keep getting cash flow. It'll make up for all of the debasement, and then he can buy more rental properties or he can buy stocks. He had a pretty decently designed portfolio. He spoke to a financial advisor in the past, but now, because he discovered Bitcoin, because he watched my videos, he doesn't want real estate anymore because the management is just so difficult. It takes so much time. He's a doctor. He works long hours. He's stressed out. He deals with dying patients constantly. He doesn't want to come home to a call where his tenant needs him to go over to the property to plunge their toilet. He also doesn't want to deal with a property manager. He doesn't want to deal with realtors. He doesn't want to deal with banks. He doesn't want to deal with all of these institutions that take more money out of him. He wants to just hold something that he can use to build wealth for the long term. To him, Bitcoin was a no brainer. It made no sense not to own Bitcoin. So he sold his properties. He sold every single rental property he had. He had something like 10 properties, 10 or 12 properties. He got rid of all of them to buy Bitcoin. He didn't care about the tax consequences. He didn't care about anything other than getting rid of his properties to save in something that he doesn't have to work so hard to maintain. More people are going to do this. More people are going to make this decision. More people are going to decide to get rid of their stocks, their real estate, their bonds, their gold to own Bitcoin. I want you to do this before them. I want you to do this before the billionaires really figure this out, before the millionaires really figure this out. The majority of millionaires have no idea what Bitcoin is. There are 60 million millionaires out there. If they want to right now, they could buy 5 to 10 Bitcoin pretty easily. The average millionaire has a net worth way higher than $1 million, of course. So they could get 5 to 10 Bitcoin. But in total, there are only 21 million Bitcoin. So if each of them went out and bought 5 to 10 Bitcoin, that's 300 to 600 million Bitcoin. But there aren't that many Bitcoin to begin with. So when these people figure it out and they start borrowing against their real estate, what's going to happen? If they go and buy 1 Bitcoin, and then another one goes and buys 2 Bitcoin, 5 Bitcoin, 10 Bitcoin, 20 Bitcoin, 1,000 Bitcoin, what's going to happen to the price if there's no Bitcoin left for you to buy? You're going to be working for Bitcoin. Today, if your hourly wage is $30, you can buy something like 20,000 Satoshis in Canada, or if you're in the US, you can buy 30,000 Satoshis. This means for you to get to 1 million Satoshis, it'll take under 40 hours. So 40 hours to get to 1 million Satoshis versus in the future, you're going to be getting 20,000 Satoshis a year as your entire salary. So it's your decision. Do you want to wait until the market rate for your labor is 20,000 Satoshis a year, or do you want to buy it today, where you can buy 20,000 Satoshis in an hour of work? If you want to live a life beyond just paying bills, being at home, struggling to make ends meet, then you have to accumulate Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is going to be the only way to get out of this financial system. If the world stays on a fiat standard and you have no Bitcoin, over the next 30, 40 years, you're going to be screwed. Everything you save is going to go back to your government. You're going to have nothing to account for all of the years that you dedicated to working at a job. Your pension is going to be worth nearly nothing. Your social security is going to be worth nearly nothing. I don't think this is what you want for yourself. I don't want this for you. So, as usual, the best thing you can do is stack as much Bitcoin as you can get. Just put your money into Bitcoin. Don't even think about it. Don't think about the volatility. Turn your screen off. Put your phone away. Delete all of your trading apps. You don't even need to look at the price. Just set up a dollar cost average. Buy $20, $50, $100 a week, whatever you can afford. $5 a week, $1 a week, whatever you can afford. Just get your hands on it. Eventually, whatever Bitcoin you can buy today is going to be completely unaffordable for the average person, because they're not going to have enough savings to buy that Bitcoin. As inflation rises, they're able to put less and less into their savings. So get the Bitcoin that you can get before the US dollar inflation rate increases massively, before the Canadian dollar inflation rate increases massively. Buy the Bitcoin that you can buy, because it's going to lead to prosperity in the future. If you can buy Bitcoin today, maybe you can save some for your kids, your grandkids. You give them that step up where they don't have to struggle at a job they hate to get a fraction of the Bitcoin that you can get today. So make it your goal to buy as much Bitcoin as you can. This is the best asymmetric opportunity you can get. If Bitcoin's price rises at 30% per year over the next 20 years, and I think that this is definitely possible, if this happens, then you get back 190 times whatever money you put in. So if you put in $1 today, that's like saving $190 for the future. If you put in $10 today, that's $1,900 for the future. If you put in $1,000 today, you're going to see that you're going to have $190,000 in the future if Bitcoin does what I think it will. And to paint an even clearer picture here, I want to show you some numbers. If your expenses are something like $3,000 a month, over time, your expenses are going to increase. If we see a 4% increase in your expenses over time, we're going to see that today your expenses are $37,200. In 2035, they'll be up to $55,000. Then in 2045, 20 years from now, they'll be at $82,000. If your wage doesn't increase at the same pace as this, then you're screwed. You get nothing. You're not going to be able to make ends meet. You're going to go homeless. In another 10 years, in 2055, your expenses will be $120,000 per year. So they go from $37,200 to $120,654 in 30 years. This is if you save in fiat. This is if you denominate your expenses in fiat only. But in terms of Bitcoin, we can see today, if you're spending $37,200, your Bitcoin expenses are 0.357 Bitcoin per year. In 10 years, they've dropped almost 90%. Then in another 10 years, they'll drop another 90%. We can see here 10 years, Bitcoin expenses, 412,000 Satoshis per year. Then in another 10 years, your expenses will be 44,280 Satoshis per year. This is if Bitcoin rises at 30% per year in purchasing power and your annual expenses rise at 4%. Keep in mind that these numbers could be wrong, but the point here is that in fiat, your annual expenses are going to rise forever. Eventually, you're going to see your $37,200 expense being at $1 million. So anything you save today, if you save in fiat, anything you save today eventually is going to be worthless. It's going to be worth nothing, absolutely nothing. On the other hand, anything you save in Bitcoin today, let's say you can save 0.1 Bitcoin today. After a few years, you'd be able to retire. So let's say in 2041, after 2041, your total cost of living will be 0.05 Bitcoin. If Bitcoin keeps rising at 30% per year, if we stay on a fiat currency standard, I think that's entirely possible if the world continues to use fiat. But you can see here, save zero point 0.1 Bitcoin, 2042, you can retire forever. You may be able to retire actually sooner. So 2039, you may be able to retire. You can see here, yeah, 2039, you can retire if you put zero point 0.1 Bitcoin away. Just zero point 0.1 Bitcoin. In the legacy financial system, this same retirement would probably take 45 years, 50 years, even 60 years for some people. If you can put away 0.25 Bitcoin, let's see what the numbers look like. So what I'm doing here is I'm just adding up your Bitcoin expenses every single year. And then I'm looking at the bottom down here to see what your expenses will be in your entire retirement. So if Bitcoin keeps rising at 30% and your expenses keep rising at 4%, 2034 you can retire. You'll have 0.01 Bitcoin left over. When you see that number here, 0.24 Bitcoin is your total expense in Bitcoin terms. Your Bitcoin stack is 0.25 Bitcoin. You can borrow against that Bitcoin. You can have it keep growing for you. So you never even have to get rid of that Bitcoin. If we stay on a fiat currency standard, that may be the best decision you make. So over time, regardless of who you are, how much wealth you have, you need to have Bitcoin. If you're a millionaire, if you're a billionaire, if you're a trillionaire, if you have $10 in your bank account, if you have $100 in your bank account, you need Bitcoin. Get Bitcoin before the rest of the world figures it out. If you're watching this video, you are way ahead of the majority of people. If you want to book a meeting with me, you can do that using the link in the description below. A lot of people book meetings just because they want to ask a single question. As soon as they ask that question, it opens up Bitcoin to them completely. It's a paradigm shift. You're paying essentially for a paradigm shift. You're paying to ask many questions that have stopped you from buying Bitcoin. And just based on my experience, I try to put you in the right direction. I try to tell you what to look for. I try to give you the explanations myself. So buy Bitcoin, put it away, keep it safe, make sure that nobody can take it from you, make sure that you have it when you need it. In 10, 20, 30 years, you're going to need that Bitcoin. You're going to be able to borrow against it. You're going to be able to improve your lifestyle by borrowing against it. And if fiat collapses by then you're even better off. So having some Bitcoin will put you in this direction, while having no Bitcoin is going to put you in that situation where you have a much worse standard of living over time. You're not going to enjoy your life. You're not going to be happy because fiat is designed to make you unhappy. So buy as much Bitcoin as you can get, put it away, keep stacking over time, keep creating value. And I think over the next 10, 20, 30 years, you're going to be very happy with your decision.